a weathered, tanned farmhand kneeling beside a thin, defeated-looking bull in a dusty corral. The farmhand's hand gently rests on the bull's head, while a well-dressed landowner walks away in the background toward a luxury truck. Golden sunset lighting creates long shadows. That worthless beast costs more to feed than he's worth on the butcher's block. I want him gone by morning. Frank Davidson's voice boomed across the cattle yard, causing the other ranch hands to lower their eyes and shuffle their boots in the dirt. Everyone knew better than to argue with the owner of Double D Ranch, especially when money was involved. The bull in question stood alone in the holding pen, his once powerful frame now a shadow of its former glory. 3 years ago, Thunder had been the pride of Davidson's breeding stock, a champion Angus bull whose calves fetched top dollar across 3 counties. But a bout with fever last winter had left him weakened, his breeding days apparently behind him. If you stay with me for the next 15 minutes, you'll discover how one man's trash truly became another man's treasure, and how sometimes the animals we save end up saving us in ways we never imagined. Jake Miller watched from the fence line, his weathered hands gripping the weathered wood. At 32, Jake had spent more than half his life working cattle ranches across Texas. For the last 3 years, he'd been at Double D, known for having the finest breeding stock in the county, and the most demanding boss. "Sir," Jake said quietly as Davidson walked past, "I know Thunder's been struggling, but he sired some of your best calves. Maybe with some extra care." Davidson cut him off with a harsh laugh. "Extra care costs extra dollars, Miller. This isn't a charity, it's a business. That bull won't breed anymore, and he eats like he still does." He gestured toward the animal. "Look at him. He can barely hold his head up. The meat's probably tough as leather now, but at least the rendering plant will give me something for him." Jake looked at Thunder again. The bull's coat had lost its shine, and he stood with his head lowered. But there was still something in his eyes. A dignity, a spark that hadn't quite faded. "What would you take for him?" Jake asked suddenly. The ranch yard fell silent. The other hands stopped what they were doing, staring in disbelief. Davidson turned slowly. "You want to buy my culled bull?" "Yes, sir, I do." A smirk crossed Davidson's face. "You ranch hands never learn to save your money, do you?" He looked Jake up and down, taking in the patched jeans and worn boots. "Tell you what, Miller, $600, and the useless bag of bones is yours. That's half what I'd get from the rendering plant. But I'm feeling generous today." Jake swallowed hard. $600 was nearly a month's wages for him. But something about Thunder's quiet dignity had gotten to him. "I'll take him," Jake said, extending his hand. Davidson laughed as he shook it. "Congratulations. You just made the dumbest purchase of your life." As Davidson walked away, Hank Wilson, the foreman, approached Jake with concern in his eyes. "Jake, where are you going to keep him? And how are you going to feed a bull on your salary?" Jake stared at Thunder, wondering the same thing himself. "I've got that small acre behind my cabin. It's not much, but it's enough for one bull." "And what exactly do you plan to do with a bull that can't breed anymore?" Hank pressed. Jake shrugged. "I'm not sure yet, but I couldn't let him go to the rendering plant. Not after all he's given to this ranch." Before we see what happens next with Jake and Thunder, let me ask you, have you ever stood up for someone or something when everyone else thought it was a lost cause? Type chance in the comments if you believe everyone deserves a second opportunity. That evening, Jake led Thunder slowly down the dirt road to his small cabin on the edge of the Double D property. The bull moved with difficulty, his breathing labored even at a gentle pace. The cabin was Jake's compensation as part of his employment, a simple one-bedroom structure with a small plot of land behind it. Once they reached the fenced area, Jake opened the gate and led Thunder inside. The bull immediately lowered his massive head and tore at the sparse grass. "At least your appetite's still good," Jake murmured, patting the animal's bony flank. "We'll get you strong again, old boy. You just need someone to believe in you." Over the next few weeks, Jake poured every spare dollar and minute into Thunder's recovery. He rose an hour earlier each morning to tend to the bull before his regular duties began. He bought special feed supplements with money he'd been saving for a new saddle. He rubbed Thunder down each night with liniment for the bull's aching joints. His fellow ranch hands thought he was crazy. Davidson was right. "That bull's 1 foot in the grave," said Mitch, one of the younger hands, as they mended fences one hot afternoon. "Maybe," Jake replied, driving a post into the hard Texas soil. "But I've seen him watching the heifers when I walk him past the south pasture. There's still fire in him." Hank, who had worked the ranch for 20 years, was more diplomatic. "It's your money, Jake. But that bull isn't just weak, he's old. Sometimes kindness means knowing when to let go." But Jake couldn't let go. Something about Thunder's situation reflected his own life. Overlooked, underestimated, written off before his time. Jake had grown up in foster care, bouncing from home to home until he was old enough to work. No one had ever seen much potential in him either. By the end of the first month, Thunder had put on weight. His coat began to regain some shine with the special brushing Jake gave him every evening. The bull still moved stiffly, but he was more alert, his eyes following Jake whenever he was nearby. One evening, as Jake was finishing his chores at the main ranch, Frank Davidson pulled up in his new truck, stopping to watch as Jake loaded some hay into his old pickup. "Still wasting good feed on that bull, Miller?" Davidson called out. "He's doing better, sir," Jake replied, trying to keep his tone respectful despite his rising irritation. Davidson shook his head. "The difference between you and me is that I understand business. Sentimentality costs money. That's why I own the ranch, and you work on it." He glanced at his gold watch. "Speaking of which, the Wilcox property next door is hitting the auction block next week. Another 500 acres for the Double D." Jake knew the Wilcox place. Old man Wilcox had died last year, and his children lived in the city with no interest in ranching. It was good land, with excellent water rights. "Congratulations, sir," Jake said flatly. "If you're still with me and you're rooting for Thunder to make a comeback, hit that like button right now so more people can discover this story of second chances." As summer turned to fall, something remarkable happened. Thunder continued to improve, gaining strength and vitality with each passing week. Jake began walking him daily, gradually increasing the distance. The bull that could barely make it down the road to Jake's cabin now trotted alongside him with surprising energy. Then came the morning that changed everything. Jake was leading Thunder along the fence line that separated the Double D from the Wilcox property when he spotted the commotion. Frank Davidson was there with several men in business suits, probably the auction officials, when one of Davidson's prize heifers, heavy with calf, broke through the fence and bolted onto the Wilcox land. The heifer, panicked by the strangers, ran straight for an old, uncovered well that the Wilcox family had meant to fill in for years. In her confusion, she didn't see the danger. "No!" Davidson shouted, but he was too far away. Without thinking, Jake dropped Thunder's lead rope and sprinted toward the heifer, but he knew he wouldn't make it in time. Then, something astonishing happened. Thunder, seeing the situation, suddenly charged forward with speed that defied his age and condition. He overtook the heifer just before she reached the well, cutting off her path and forcing her to veer away from the danger. The heifer, startled by Thunder's sudden appearance, skidded to a stop, throwing up dirt and grass. Thunder positioned himself between her and the well, lowering his head in a protective stance. By the time Jake reached them, the heifer was calm, and Thunder stood guard beside her, his sides heaving from the exertion, but his posture proud. Davidson and the men in suits arrived moments later. "That's a $15,000 heifer," one of the auction officials remarked. "Not to mention the calf she's carrying." Davidson stared at Thunder, then at Jake. For once, the wealthy rancher seemed at a loss for words. "I always said he was a good bull," Jake said quietly, stroking Thunder's neck. The next day, Frank Davidson appeared at Jake's cabin door just after sunrise. Jake was surprised. In 3 years, his boss had never visited his humble home. "Miller," Davidson said without preamble, "I want to buy back the bull." Jake leaned against the door frame. "He's not for sale, Mr. Davidson. I'll give you $3,000 for him. That's 5 times what you paid." Jake shook his head. "Thunder's home now." Davidson's face reddened. "5,000 then. Be reasonable, man. It's not about the money, sir." "What is it about, then?" Davidson demanded. Jake looked past his boss to where Thunder grazed peacefully in the morning light. "It's about seeing value where others don't. It's about patience and second chances. I'm curious to know where our viewers are watching from today. Drop your state or country in the comments. I'd love to see how far this story has traveled. That afternoon, Frank Davidson returned with Hank and a proposal Jake never expected. "The bull saved me a valuable heifer," Davidson began, uncomfortable with what appeared to be an apology. "And it got me thinking. You've done something with that animal I thought was impossible." Jake waited, sensing there was more. "I've been watching how you work with the stock. You have a way with them that can't be taught." Davidson cleared his throat. "The Wilcox auction is next week. I'm buying the property, but I need someone to manage it. The position comes with a share of the calf crop." Jake's eyes widened. It was an opportunity beyond anything he'd expected, a chance to build something of his own. "There's one condition," Davidson continued. "I want Thunder back in the breeding program. Not full-time, he's still recovering, but we'll try him with a small group of heifers. If your rehabilitation methods worked as well as they appear, his genetics are too valuable to waste." 2 months later, Thunder stood in a new pasture on the former Wilcox property, now the North Division of Double D Ranch. Around him grazed a select group of heifers. The bull's coat gleamed in the winter sunlight, his head held high again. Jake watched from the porch of the ranch manager's house, his house now, as Thunder moved confidently among his new herd. Frank Davidson pulled up in his truck and joined Jake at the fence line. "First ultrasounds came back," Davidson said. 12 out of 15 heifers confirmed pregnant." Jake nodded, pride swelling in his chest. He just needed time and care. Davidson was silent for a moment. "You know, Miller, my father built this ranch from nothing. Worked himself to the bone. Somewhere along the way, I started measuring everything by dollars and cents. Forgot there are some things you can't put a price on. Like loyalty," Jake said, watching as Thunder gently herded a younger heifer back toward the group. "And perseverance," Davidson added. He handed Jake an envelope. "The paperwork for your 10% stake in Thunder's offspring. You earned it." 5 years later, the Thunder line of Angus cattle became known throughout Texas for their hardiness and gentle temperament. The old bull himself lived to see 3 more successful breeding seasons before retiring to a special pasture near Jake's house, where he spent his final years in comfort and dignity. When visitors asked about the bronze statue of a bull that stood at the entrance to the North Division, Jake would tell Thunder's story, how a discarded animal had not only recovered, but had saved the ranch's most valuable heifer and helped create a legendary bloodline. The true worth of anything, Jake would conclude, isn't in what it can do for you right now. It's in its heart, and in having the